Hey friends, so I've been meaning to make this video for a few days now, but it's slightly more challenging than usual, so I guess I've been procrastinating. And I've also been working on my book. Anyway, some context first and caveats. Context. So I've been making YouTube videos for a year and a half-ish now, right? And I have goals, right? Like so far, I'm just practicing making as many videos as I can, getting used to the sound of my voice, getting used to looking at a camera, getting just used to this whole process, getting used to different lengths of time, talking, putting titles and captions and stuff. So I've been thinking about what the title for this video is going to be for some time. And one of my goals is I believe that boys and men need a better example or need more examples, right, of men being masculine, demonstrating a way of being that is something that not necessarily they need to copy, but they can reference and work with and think about. And yeah, so I've just felt like that is something that I needed in my life when I was younger. I pieced it together from a lot of different media, from books, from videos. Sometimes some men, they are great in some ways and terrible in other ways, and so you sort of cherry pick the good stuff and you try not to think about the bad stuff as you integrate it into your own consciousness. And I just feel like these things should be talked about. And I saw a tweet a few days ago by, I believe, a lady who was a survivor of gun violence, right, in the US. And she wrote a book about the Parkland shooting, I think. And she had a tweet that was something like, I have the right to feel safe at home. I have the right to feel safe in the streets. I have the right, it's like all caps, right, and all caps feel. I have the right to feel safe, blah, blah, blah. And then like, your desire to own a gun doesn't supersede my rights and my feelings or something like that. And, so I'm not American. I'm halfway across the planet. I don't have commentary on guns and gun violence. But it just struck me when I was reading that tweet that is a tweet that I would never write. And I believe the reason for that, in how I tweeted about it on one of my alts, was politics aside, this strikes me as peak white woman politics or a white woman power move. And I don't say that dismissively. I don't say that as what she's doing is bad or wrong or any of that. All I'm observing is that it's a move that is accessible to her, that she can deploy in pursuit of her interests. And it is a move that I would never make as a brown man. I don't think that if I tweeted, I have the right to feel safe, I have the right to, I don't think people would sympathize with that. I don't think as much as they would with her, right? And I don't think this is personal about me or about her. I think this is just the nature of how gender is perceived at large. And one of the challenges with talking about gender is that, if you want to talk about straight men, straight women, lately I would say the past decade or so, there has been a lot of increase, and a good increase, I believe. I think this is a good thing, that there's more queer representation, right? There's more discussion about trans issues, people with different sexual orientation, gender identity. That's great. I love it. I actually believe, honestly, that, for example, trans men and women, they give us insight into gender that we almost could not have without otherwise, right? Because they are the only people who have experienced transitioning from one gender to the other. And like in the 90s and earlier, there was like one of the most common comedy tropes, right? It's, oh, men are like this and women are like that. And then the comedian explains how men are and how women are and how there's conflict, and everyone laughs. And I don't think they made those jokes necessarily because it was the peak of humor, although people laugh. I think it's almost like a public service of sorts, right? Like they are being, and I'm not saying that what they're saying is correct, but what they're saying is, it's meant, so like, everybody's doing some kind of job, right? So the job of the comedian in that very specific 80s, 90s gender role comedy is to provide the audience with a framework for thinking about things, right? So there's a husband and wife in the audience, comedians joking about husbands are like this and wives are like that, and the husband and wife laugh because they haven't talked about this between themselves, and then they have the conversation subsequently, right? So that's the job that the comedian is doing, in my opinion. And that kind of joke has kind of fallen out of fashion, right? It's just tacky now to make that kind of broad assertion. And now we have all of these kind of nuanced perspectives from people who say, oh, men can wear dresses, women can be assertive and domineering and career minded. All of this is great. I think that we should have spaces for variance. I consider myself a misfit, right? Like just not just being an ethnic minority, but just psychologically, my ADHD, my internet obsession, like all these things. I am not within the standard norms of the society that I live in, and probably not in the world either. But I have learned to kind of communicate with people well, and that has been a very useful skill for me, and I'm trying to share it with other people. Right. So I have a soft spot for misfits of all kinds. I have a soft spot for gay people, trans people, people from different backgrounds, people who outsiders of all kinds. I love them. I care about them deeply. That said, I also think that there hasn't been much good conversation about the broad fundamentals of gender, masculinity, femininity. Well, okay, I can't speak about women and femininity, right? But as a man, I feel that we have not discussed. I'm thinking, as I say man, my voice is getting lower. I feel at some subconscious, semi-conscious level, I'm like, oh, masculinity, low voice, right? And again, you can still be a man without speaking in a low voice, but the general understanding is that the lower your voice, the more masculine it is, which is why when trans women transition, some of them who want to pass better as feminine, they go for voice coaching or whatever, and they train themselves to speak in a different register, a different style, whatever. And so the thing is, my views on gender are quite derivative, which is to say that I don't really have strong opinions on what a man is or what a woman is, but I have an understanding of what I think the vast majority of people think men are and women are. And if you understand that well and you navigate it well and you play along with expectations to some degree, you can subvert expectations to some degree. Some people would say it's unmasculine to wear jewelry. I say fuck that. It is, you could say that it's feminine to wear jewelry, and I do believe that I can be a man with some feminine traits, and that being comfortable with my feminine traits makes me even more masculine in some people's eyes. Like women find it attractive, and what is more masculine than being attractive to women as a straight man, right? So it's complex. It's very, very complex. It's not fixed. It's like a ocean. But like again, while it's not fixed, there are patterns you can perceive and there are things you can understand. And what I was trying to get at was that white woman, could complain articulately about her feelings and expect to be taken seriously. And she also gets dismissed by some people. They're like, oh, you're just woman with your feelings. True, that's also an issue. But like, there's a nuanced thing here I'm trying to describe, which is that what she did is a valid strategy for someone who passes as a white woman that would not be valid for a black man or a brown man, right? Because we are expected to be stoic, tough, not complain. And I then read a blog post by her name is Agnes Callard, I think, a philosopher, and she was writing about complaints in general, and she was talking about her son and how her infant son, a child, when he was a child, and then as he's growing up, and there's a cute anecdote about how he's clapping his hands as like an infant or like 10 months old. He's clapping his hands until it hurts, and then he's holding his hands out, kind of sad. I think he might have been crying, and the implied message there is like, why am I being hurt by something? Like, it's complaining in a sense, right? And complaining is something that, again, children do it all the time when they cry. And so there is this general assumption that adults don't just kind of burst into tears like children do, like infants do, because there are expectations that adults behave a certain way, which isn't to say that adults never cry and should not cry and cannot cry, but there are expectations of how adults conduct themselves relative to children, for example, right? Like, so if you cry at a child, back at them. There's a humor in that if you do it comedically, and that the reason that's funny is because you're subverting expectations, right? The expectation is that the adult is the adult in the relationship. It's almost self-evident, or like we just hold these assumptions to be so. We assume these things so fundamentally that trying to explain it feels silly, because that's what the adult does. The adult is the adult in the relationship, the stable one, the predictable one. And children whose parents are unstable, like children of alcoholics, they're forced to grow up a lot faster because they're forced to play those other roles. Anyway, Agnes, she quoted a bunch of philosophers. She quoted like Kant and Aristotle and Nietzsche. And apparently what all these philosophers have said is that complaining is it's just unmanly, feminine, right? And I think there is a truth to that, sort of. But again, you have to be very careful when you say things like this, because I'm not saying that men cannot complain and should not complain ever. I'm not saying that only women complain and that women are a complaining sex or whatever. Again, like there are all these people take these sort of subtle nuances and then they just double down on. They make them so extreme and they caricaturize them into ridiculosity. It's a word, ridiculosity. That's just not healthy. It's tacky, right? It's not sophisticated, it's not classy, it's not skillful. But it's true. I do think that women can talk about their feelings more, whereas men will be taken more seriously by both men and women, which is, again, it's not quite fair, right? Like, if you're going by person, but at a person by person level, right? If you're evaluating individuals at the workplace or whatever, it's not fair that a woman trying to be taken seriously at work is like playing at a disadvantage, because the gender norms that people are brought up with and they assume to be true, and this may change eventually, but like it's thousands of years of cultural indoctrination, or cultural what's the word? What's a nice way of saying indoctrination? Just enculturation, right? Thousands of years of culture have made people assume that masculine tendencies are a certain way, feminine tendencies are a certain way, men are like this, women are like that. It's not helpful, but it is what it is, and you have to kind of navigate that. At the same time, there's a reason why climate change, like Greta Thunberg, like there's a reason she's a girl and not a boy. And in the past, there was this other girl who gave a speech at the UN, Savern Suzuki. She's not like in her 40s, but like in 1992, she gave a speech. She's like the previous Greta, right? And it's just, to me, it's just kind of a fact. It's I'm not mad about it. It's just the way it is. The suffering of women is taken more seriously, in a sense. I don't know if I'm using the right words. I don't know if I'm conveying it properly. I'm sorry if I've upset anyone by kind of trying to grasp at a thing. I'm not getting it right. I intend to get better at communicating about this, but like, you kind of have to fumble with it for starters. I hope you can see that I'm trying my best. And I try my best to take my female friends seriously, and I try my best to encourage my male friends to express their feelings and create a safe space for them to express their anxieties and loneliness and complaints. We can do that. We can all do that for each other. We can create spaces where, at least amongst friends, we are more just. But when we're talking about navigating society at large, like, we can't control that directly overnight. Like, maybe we can help to change it for our kids and our grandkids, right? Maybe we can make the world more nuanced and understanding. But, certain things I think will always be true. Like, it's unfortunate that height is something that people associate with authority, right? Because just something about the visual metaphor of when you're a child, adults are taller than you, so someone who is taller is more adult. Like, the association is that it's not cool, but it seems to be what it is, and you kind of have to work with it. And same for low voice, high voice, muscles, muscle mass, skin color, right? Like, what assumptions do people have when they look at my skin color? I can't change that. I can't, it's just, I have to roll with it. I have to find, maybe I can subvert expectations somehow, but like, it is what it is, and you have, like, being in denial about it does not help, And so where am I going with this? I guess, so I think that a lot of boys and men struggle with wanting to be more masculine, wanting to be men, right? And one of the, in our culture, we don't really have, when I say our culture, I mean like global, internet, digital age, software engineer kind of modernity, right? White collar job life. You don't really have trials of bravado, right? You don't really have, I guess in sports you kind of have that and whatever, but like we don't really have coming of age rituals as much anymore. And so the thing that a lot of men have come to associate with masculinity is sex with women, right? Again, I'm talking about straight men, right? This is a caveat for my whole video. And as a strange result, I think a lot of men are and boys are very needy about sex. They don't even really care that much about the women involved. They're not even really interested in being sensitive and attending to the woman's needs and her concerns and so on. They just think I'm not a man until I fuck, right? Until I have sex, until I penetrate a woman. That's where my masculinity is. That's where I get to be who I am. And it's like I don't get to be a woman because I'm a man, and that's how people perceive me. People perceive me as a man. I can't smile at children when my wife is not around. When I am with my wife, I can be friendly with kids, and everyone's like, oh, it's a husband and wife, and they're being friendly with kids. If I'm alone, people are gonna assume, like some people will assume that I'm a predator, like just a big scary brown man smiling at kids. What's his problem, right? Like, and it's like even if they think there's like a 5% chance that maybe he's weird, like it just makes things weirder. And that's just what it is. Women can smile at kids all the time. I can walk down a dark street. When I was in San Francisco, some people told me not to go to, where was it that I went? Tenderloin. They said it was a dangerous place. And I went. I was just curious, and I saw people, doing drugs, and it's an interesting experience. But I didn't feel threatened at all because I'm a big brown man. People are scared of me, and that's just it. It's different, right? And I think part of what's beautiful about life is that we can talk to people who have different backgrounds, different experiences, and we can see, the unfairness that each of us has to reckon with and deal with, right? And I wanted to say somewhere that, part of the interesting thing about Beauty and the Beast, people tend to think of it as, oh, the beauty is so fragile and she's like a flower, and the Beast is this fierce big man and he protects her. And what people don't always equally realize is that she protects him as well. She protects him from society, which sees him as a monster and a threat, right? And she sees that he has a sensitive soul, and there is this symbioticness to how they take care of each other that is very beautiful to think about. And that's kind of the vibe I'm trying to go for. I was talking about men and masculinity and seeking it in sex. And one way that so thinking about complaining, right? If complaining is feminine coded, right? Like then it would seem to me to be true, and I think this is true in the eyes of most people. A way to become more masculine in other people's eyes that is just as powerful as being taller or lowering your voice and lifting weights and so on and so forth is to complain less, right? And I don't mean that you don't have problems. Everyone has problems, right? I don't mean you don't have problems, but I mean just consider your performance. Gender is a performance. There's a performance component to gender on top of your what you feel like on the inside. There's how people perceive you, and you can influence how people perceive you. There's this great line by RuPaul. I saw it in an ad on Facebook where he's wearing a suit and he says, do you like money? Do you want money? Wear a suit. Because people respond to that. Like, people see a person in a suit, like a blazer, and they think, wow, that person has it together. They're a professional. I should give them money. Like, it is what it is. It's performance, it's drag, and it works. And so you can complain about it, or you can, which is your right if you want to. I'm not going to stop you from complaining. But what I'm suggesting is that you can choose not to complain, or you can choose to complain in private with trusted friends. And then in your public sphere, right, in your public performance, gender is a performance, right? You can choose not to complain, right? There's a funny irony in all of the men online who want to be masculine and want to be appreciated for their masculinity, but they spend so much time complaining about women, which is I think, again, like when we talk about gender stereotypes, women don't like men who complain. Like just randomly in general in the open. I think they do want men to be emotionally the men in their lives that they care about, their husbands and their men. They want them to be emotionally honest with them, right? But when a man is just ranting and raving about women in public, that's not a good look, right? It's not. It's tacky. The performance implies that the man is unintegrated, kind of doesn't have his shit in order. Women have their own versions of these things, right? Like it's how they dress, makeup, lipstick, hair, whatever. Like what it means to perform femininity as a gender is, there's all these challenges involved. I cannot speak on that. But there are the equivalent challenges for men if you want to come across as masculine. You can choose to disregard the whole thing if you want, but then it just, how will people perceive you subsequently? It's just all the things. I feel like I'm going in circles. I just wanted to talk about this for a while, and if you have any questions or observations or concerns, I would love to hear it, because I want to talk about these things periodically, maybe like once a week or once every 2 weeks. I want to talk about men and masculinity and what it means to be a man in the modern world, and how to feel good as men. There's this horrible statistic I saw recently that men have fewer friends now than they used to. We can fix that, guys. Guys, it's up to us. It's up to us to reach out to other men, reassure them, give them space to express their stresses and anxieties and frustrations, uplift each other. Dudes rock, right? We can do that. And yeah, let me know what you think. Done.